Hi guys, hey, I got something new. This came in unsolicited, and I'm gonna challenge you to guess what I'm shooting. Should be able to figure it out pretty quickly, both from the looks of the rifle and the sound that you're about to hear. But this is first time. They look like about the same hole. As you can see, there's a violent recoil. This is not picking up for the first time ever. Must be because of that little bullet. What do you guys think it is? I bet you're wrong. Boy, this little rifle shoots well. That surprises me. I've generally not been a fan of these little plastic rifles. Whoa, it's just putting them all in the same hole and recording absolutely nothing. That is strange. Oh, I think I'm going to keep this. They're all in one ragged little hole right there. Of course, it's only 25 yards away because this is obviously a 22 long rifle, right? Wrong. Something new. Yeah, guys. A new rimfire cartridge from Winchester. It's the 21 Sharp. And we're going to dive in and figure out what the heck this thing is all about on this episode of Ron Spomer Outdoors. All right, guys, 21 Sharp. What are we looking at here? You're not going to see too much from that, so we're going to bring in some close-ups. But for right now, I just want to pull one out of the box, hold it up beside the familiar 22 long rifle. And as you can tell by the way my fingers are spread, there's not much difference between these two. In fact, when I lay a caliper on these and measure them, their rim is exactly the same. The body dimension is the same. The length of the case is the same. They're just about the same. So why are they calling this one a 22 Sharp? Well, because it's not a 22 caliber, it's a 21. What? Why would anyone make a 21 caliber? How redundant can you get? What can this do that the 22 long rifle can't do? Well, that's what we're going to try to dig into and discover on this episode. But I think I've got the basic idea, and it started with lead. As most of us know, lead has become a bad word because it's a bad natural element that can poison animals and people. And there's quite a bit of argument about whether or not bullets do this, but there's good evidence to show that bullet lead broken up inside of carrion, like the deer parts you leave behind in the woods, can poison and kill bald eagles, golden eagles, California condors. I haven't heard anything about vultures, but pretty much birds that eat meat pick up the little lead fragments. So if you're out shooting a whole bunch of ground squirrels that are eating all the alfalfa in your field or something like that, and some scavenger birds come in and eat those ground squirrels and pick up that little 22, 40 grain or 32 grain lead bullet, could kill them. So certain states, and obviously California is going to be the first one on the agenda, have outlawed lead bullets in 22 long rifle of all things. And you know how many thousands and thousands of rounds of those we shoot for plinking, recreation, target shooting, small game, varmint control, and that sort of thing. What are people going to do with their 22s if they cannot get ammunition? Well, the ammo companies have made some copper or sintered metal non-lead bullets for 22, but generally they lack mass and velocity. The 21 Sharp has a new approach to fixing this problem, and that is reducing the diameter, because the traditional long rifle 22, and even the short and the long, but this old cartridge from way back in the 1850s has something called a heeled bullet. The bullet diameter is the same as the case diameter. So in order to fit that bullet into the case, they have to reduce the diameter that fits into the neck of the case. So that's why they call it a heeled bullet. Can't do that for a reasonable price with an all copper bullet or a sintered copper tin bullet or anything like that. So what's the solution? I think Winchester has come up with it. It's the 21. Just go down in diameter enough to make it fit inside of the case, the same as they did way back in 1958 with the 22 Winchester Magnum rimfire. That uses a full diameter bullet, but it's not going to be fitting in the same case as the 22 long rifle. They actually made that case a little bit bigger. In this situation, they took the original 22 long rifle case and they made the bullet a little bit smaller. That means you need a smaller diameter bore. Not much, by golly, but just a tiny bit. And then what it enables them to do is make a sleeker profile bullet. So it can be just a little bit higher ballistics coefficient. And we're going to run some numbers and see if we can figure out what kind of advantage that gives us. But my first shots here show that it can be remarkably accurate. At 25 yards, these are all pretty much falling inside of a quarter inch or less the way it looks. Little cluster. So with some precision shooting techniques and stuff, who knows how tight I can get these groups to fall. But I think we might have a solution for the future. Now, you might say, what am I going to do with my 22 rifles? I mean, I've got 22 long rifles. I can't shoot these 21 bullets in them. Well, I'm not so sure about that. We're going to check into that as well, because the bullets will be a little bit undersized, but I think the difference is so tiny that they might even be accurate in a 22 long rifle. But we've got to ask the manufacturer how safe this is going to be. The pressures are supposedly the same, 24,000 PSI for both of them. That's the old traditional with the long rifle. Same with the 21 Sharp. They look to me like they have the same overall length, so it should fit in the common magazines. And here's a magazine on this one. This is the Winchester Wildcat. And you're familiar with the little rotary round magazines. Looks about like the Ruger 1022 style. So if those bullets, cartridges fit in there, fit into the actions, I think even with your old rimfires, you might be able to turn off the barrel, put on a 21 caliber barrel for the 21 Sharp, and you'd be rolling. But a lot of things that need to be determined. So let's do a little bit more shooting. Let's see if we can't get this chronograph to register some of this stuff to see how fast these are going. They're supposed to be going about 1,200 feet per second or so, and that's standard velocity for a long rifle. But we'll get in close here with the cameras. We'll get upstairs in the studio. We've got better lighting and look at some of these things. Ooh, I take it back, guys. This is a 25 grain copper matrix bullet. So it's quite a bit lighter than the 40 grain bullet from the 22 long rifle. That's usually going 1,200 feet per second. This one is credited with 1,750 feet per second. So that will make up for a lot of the lighter weight in that bullet. And they are showing that the trajectory with a dead-on zero at 50 yards, you're going to drop only 3.4 inches at 100 yards. And your energy is going to be 76 foot-pounds of energy retained at 100 yards. That's pretty impressive. You're starting off with 170 foot-pounds of energy, which is, I believe, more than the 22 long rifle with the 40 grain bullet. So this thing is looking like it's going to be pretty interesting. Let's shoot a little bit more just to see what side of a tight group we can get. I'm going to aim for a tinier target here and see if I can't shoot an even better group than that last one. But this is pretty impressive. Now, this rifle has been shot a lot. It's really dirty. And they want me to get it back so they can send it to another gun tester ASAP. So, whew, let's hurry up. Now, I am going to aim as fine as I can here. This scope is really just a 4-power little zoom-up scope from Loophole. I actually like that little guy. It's about right on a 22 like this. So I'm going to aim for the junction of some yellow lines here on the upper left diamond, where the bottom of the diamond hits the white or the yellow vertical line coming up. Yeah, it's easier for me to aim at that fine point. No, jumped on out of the group already. So that's what I get for trying harder. That's beside the last one. Yeah, I don't have the best sight picture here. This darned afternoon light here makes it pretty hard. I should do it in the morning when we've got a better sight. Not missing any squirrels. Yeah, just that first shot that's out of the group. Yeah, I think I'll try another one. It's kind of fun. 1624.7. I've got one reading at least. Let's see if we can cycle through this. Average was 1624.7. The max was 1624.7. And the minimum was 1624.7. I think we got one reading. Close enough, we'll take it. I just don't know why this thing is doing that to me. Let's go to I certainly can't blame it on the light. Too tiny of a bullet? I don't know. Guys have been a bit under the weather. Got some kind of a flu a couple of days ago. I seem to be recovering pretty well. Just don't feel like wrestling any alligators. I should be able to handle a 22. Okay. This time I am going for the right point of that yellow diamond. So this will be just above the last group. And it's right about where they've been hitting, a little bit to the right. And about touching the last one. Oh, and now I have a fly crawling up my belly. That always helps your concentration. Get out of there. I tell you what, fall and all the bugs are looking for a place to hide. Boy, they're all falling right in there. What have I done here? Didn't get the old one out. Looks like that was it. 1857. We got some readings here, guys. Minimum of 1798.7. Maximum of 1908 feet per second. And an average of 1846. That is a lot faster than predicted on the box. Whoo-wee! And a darn good group. So, pretty impressed with all of that. This thing would be fun to take on a squirrel hunt. But I've got to send it back. So let's go up to the office. We'll take some close looks at these things, look at some numbers, see if we can't find some ballistics coefficients to do some comparisons on drop and drift and all the rest of it. But it looks to me like we have got what is going to amount to a new version of a 22 long rifle. Going to be the 21 Sharp. Seems like it'll be able to shoot a little bit more pointy bullets, a little higher velocity, because the bullet is narrower. That's why it has a higher BC. Not much narrower, but every little bit counts. The skinnier your bullet, the higher the ballistics coefficient. So this might be the new inexpensive 22 rimfire of the future, only it'll be a 21. Say, you notice I was using ear protection for shooting a little rimfire? Yeah, you really need to. These things go off putting out 140 decibels of sound blast, and that is more than enough to damage your hearing. And the more you shoot, the worse it is. So I just generally use muffs for everything. Now, these shell shock muffs, I love them. They're so comfortable. I never get pressure headaches from them. If you want to protect your hearing, I would suggest you pick up a set of these. You can order from Shell Shock directly, shellshock.com, and mention RSO, and you'll get a 10% discount. Just think, save 10% of your money and save your hearing simultaneously. You're welcome. Well, we've seen how the 21 Sharp shoots out on the range with his 25 grain copper bullet. And what we need to figure out now is, how's this going to match up in actual field performance for hunting varmints and small game as compared to the traditional 22 long rifle? So with the 22 long rifle, I'm going to work with a 40 grain round nose bullet. That's kind of a standard. And the velocities are usually around 1,200 feet per second. Some will go 1,250, some 1,150. That's kind of a standard for your high velocity. Of course, you can get your hypervelocity loads and things, and you've got lighter bullets there and all that. But we're not going to go into all that. We're just going to compare the traditional load with this new 25 grain bullet in a 21 Sharp. The idea, of course, is to figure out how to get a copper bullet that is more often being mandated in states who don't allow lead bullets because of the contamination of the carcass, and then scavenging birds like bald eagles, golden eagles, condors eat that meat and they die from lead poisoning. That's kind of the whole gist of this, and I think that's why Winchester came up with this. They're trying to get ahead of the curve a little bit on it. So we're going to use the 25 grain bullet versus the 40 grain bullet, 21 Sharp versus 22 long rifle. How's it going to stack up? Well, I've got two charts here, and you can look at the numbers. Every 10 yards, I've got more data. We zeroed both of these for 50 yards. How are they going to perform? Well, looks like the 21 Sharp shoots flatter all the way. I mean, look at those numbers. At 70 yards, you've got 1.41 inches of drop out of the 22 long rifle, and only a little more than a half inch of drop out of the 25 grain bullet out of the 21 Sharp. All the way out at 100 yards, you've got just a little more than 3 inches of drop from the 21 Sharp, but you've got almost 6 inches of drop out of the 22 long rifle. So this little guy is going to be shooting flatter. Of course, it starts off with a lot more velocity, and that's what's helping it. But the heavier bullet, 40 grain versus 25, it's almost twice as much. That heavy bullet is going to retain more energy downrange. Are we going to lose too much energy for this little zippy bullet to be effective? Let's look at our energy chart. And at 50 yards, we're hanging on to 103 foot-pounds of energy out of the traditional 22 long rifle. And we're down to 97 in this 25 grain bullet out of the 21 Sharp. Whoa, that is not too far off, guys. Pretty impressive stuff. All the way out at 100 yards, you are down to 70 foot-pounds of energy in that little 25 grain bullet, hanging on to 88 foot-pounds in the long rifle. I think that's a pretty reasonable trade-off right there, especially when you consider your drop differences. You really got an advantage with the 21 Sharp. And I think, well, it's the velocity, of course, that's really making the difference here. If you could get a 40 grain bullet in this 21 Sharp, you'd really be smoking, and that is coming. Here's some of the bullets that Winchester has on the drawing boards, if they're not already out there. One will be a 37 grain black copper plated bullet, and that's supposed to be going 1,335 feet per second. The 42 grain bullet is a full metal jacket, so that's comparable to the traditional round nose lead slug in the 22 long rifle. That's going to be going 1,330 feet per second. And then they have a 34 grain jacket at hollow point, and that one is promised to go 1,500 feet per second. So, yeah, I think we're going to have some pretty darn good options. So if you are sort of anticipating this outlawing of 22 lead slugs, much as we all loved the 22 long rifle, if they're going to limit us in that fashion, we're going to have to come up with another option, and this, of course, might be it. I think this is the whole reason that Winchester came up with it. You know, there are certain advantages to having a cartridge in which the bullet fits inside of the neck of the case without having to be stepped down to be healed. You can make a more efficient bullet. I think you can make it a little less expensive, and you can give it the sharp nose that you're seeing here, and that helps the ballistics coefficient. That helps with all the downrange energies and trajectories and all the rest of it. Oh, speaking of which, let's take a look at the wind deflection. That's a big deal with slow bullets like this. Here we got a column for windage here. Let's go out to 50 yards, and your 10 mile an hour right angle wind deflection on this little 25 grain bullet is going to be 3.75, so 3 3/4 of an inch of deflection. And you're going to have better performance out of your 40 grain bullet in the 22 long rifle, 2.5, a little more than 2.5 inches. So inch and a quarter benefit with the old 22. And that, of course, continues, boy, out at 100 yards. You've got almost 8 inches of deflection on the 21 Sharp, but only just under 5 with the 22 long rifle. So that is one advantage that the good old 22 still has over the 21 Sharp. But remember, that's the 25 grain copper matrix bullet. If you're in a state where you're allowed to still shoot lead bullets, Winchester's going to be loading those. So I think you're going to have an advantage. We'll get some of those down the road and test them out, but I'm betting they're going to be doing better than the 22 long rifle because of that shape, higher ballistics coefficient. And that's something I'm kind of excited about. Now, here's one other idea I have. I don't swear this is going to work, but I'm pretty confident it will. Because they are using the exact same case dimensions as the 22 long rifle, the only difference is it's a 21 caliber instead of a 22. Really, you could use the same rifle and just change barrels. So say if you have a 10-22 Ruger autoloader, you know that barrel just clamps on there pretty simply. You can change barrels really quickly on those. You ought to be able to get a 21 caliber barrel chambered for the 21 Sharp
and bingo, off to the races. I would imagine a lot of other rifles would work in a similar fashion. So you just really need a different barrel, not a whole new rifle. So something to look forward to in the future. 21 Sharp, you might want to give it a look because I think it's going to be around for a while. This is Ron Spomer. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, and promise we'll do some more work with this new rimfire. Hunt honest and shoot straight.